The transmission was elegant. Rhythmic pulses and swirling harmonic frequencies encoded with precise mathematical complexity. It arrived on Earth's deep space listening arrays in a manner that seemed almost too polished, like someone was trying to impress. Dr. Valerie Knox didn't impress easily. "It's a diplomatic construct," she muttered, leaning closer to the screen. Her silver-rimmed glasses slid down her nose as she toggled through the decryption overlays. "They think they're talking to a civilization just like theirs." Her lab assistant, Peter Chow, glanced up from his own monitor. "Meaning?" "Meaning they expect harmony, bureaucracy, protocol. We're not exactly famous for that." Across the Atlantic, military satellites shifted in orbit, aligning to track the source of the signal. Not Earth, not even Mars or the Belt colonies. The signal was coming from beyond Saturn, a vessel in high elliptical orbit. Valerie tapped her headset. "Send this up the chain. They're initiating contact, and they're expecting diplomats." The UN scrambled. In less than 48 hours, a provisional first contact team was formed. Valerie, reluctantly conscripted as science advisor, found herself aboard the ISC Resolute, an orbital vessel hastily converted for diplomatic operations. As the Resolute reached orbit, she peered through the viewport at the alien vessel hanging motionless beyond. It resembled a seashell made of silver light, pulsating like a living organ against the black. They called themselves the Zelhari. The first voice came through on the fourth day, filtered through the ship's translation algorithms. It was melodic, uncomfortably serene. "We greet you in the spirit of universal equilibrium." Captain Horst, head of the Earth delegation, straightened his uniform. "This is a historic opportunity," he said to the assembled team. "Let's show them our best." Valerie frowned. "I don't think they know what our best really means." Inside the Zelhari vessel, the air shimmered with humidity and an exotic floral scent. The architecture curved without corners, organic and fluid, like someone had grown the structure rather than built it. The Zelhari emerged with graceful steps, tall, thin, almost translucent skin, eyes wide with luminescence. Their leader, Avari Nael, moved like mist through light. "We understand you are from a Class 3 cooperation world," she said. "Your emissions suggest strategic equilibrium and collective governance." Valerie squinted. "Class 3? A second Zelhari, smaller and vibrating at a higher frequency, responded. "We categorized your world based on isotopic data and signal patterns. Earth is stable, calm." Captain Horst smiled broadly. "Well, we do try." Valerie clenched her jaw. "Try what, exactly? They think we're pacifists." Avarinal continued. "We extend a preliminary accord of peaceful engagement. The Harmony Council believes Earth is prepared for integration." "Integration," Chow whispered. "Is this annexation?" "Or worse," Valerie whispered back. "They think they're doing us a favor." Back on Earth, satellite arrays began detecting unexpected shifts. The Zelhari weren't alone. Their arrival had triggered responses across the solar system. Silent movements, cold metal signatures appearing near Jovian space and even within the asteroid belt. Not Earth ships. Military command across major nations raised alert levels. The UN was briefed. And Valerie, on board the Resolute, began noticing subtle inconsistencies in the data the Zelhari were feeding them. "They're not here for peace," she told Captain Horst. "They're here to recruit or absorb or pacify. They misread our broadcasts. They think we evolved in a low-threat environment." Horst scoffed. "Our history isn't exactly tranquil." "Exactly. Our history is survival. Their worlds are gardens. Ours, volcanoes, ice ages, plagues, wars. Earth trained us to be adaptable. They're not ready for that." She paused. "And neither are we, if we keep pretending this is a tea party." The turning point came with a sneeze. Literally. During the second formal meeting, Chow sneezed. A reflex, harmless, a result of recycled air and nerves. 3 Zelhari collapsed into defensive postures, Alarms shrieked in frequencies no human could hear. A security field shimmered into existence. One alien vomited a bioluminescent gel. "What just happened?" Horst bellowed. "Biological contamination response," Valerie muttered wide-eyed. "They thought he was expelling a toxin." Hours later, Avarinale's tone shifted. "We were unaware your species had such aggressive internal purging systems." Valerie gave a tight smile. "That's not aggression. That's just allergies." The meeting was suspended. The Resolute returned to safe distance. The mood had shifted. The Zelhari began transmitting encrypted messages to their unseen allies. And Valerie, reviewing intercepted fragments, found one translation loop with a chilling phrase. "Preemptive harmonization protocols. Should instability persist." Instability. Humanity had been misclassified, not as diplomats, but as unpredictable anomalies. They said we were unstable. A sneeze, a reflex. That's all it took for a species whose vessels drifted in perfect silence and whose voices danced like wind chimes to flinch like prey before a predator. The Zelhari withdrew their delegation under the pretense of containment protocols. We saw it for what it was. Fear, not respect, not war. Just the first edge of fear. Back on Earth, Valerie Knox was recalled to High Command's orbital black site, a deep vaulted facility hidden beneath the Mare Serenitatis. There she was met by General Amos Drevik, commander of Earth Strategic Response. "You shook them," Drevik said without ceremony. "Now we need to know if they'll bolt or bite." Valerie stood her ground. "They didn't come for war, General, but they didn't come for peace either. They came for control." Drevik gestured to the hollow map of the inner solar system. 6 Zelhari ships now hovered at gravitational stable points, not hostile, not retreating. "Think they've got a playbook for species like us?" They thought they did, but they never encountered a planet where you need to outwit apex predators before breakfast. The ISC Resolute was ordered back out, this time with a rotating team of advisors, including exobiologists, linguists, and covert operators embedded as cultural observers. Valerie returned too, but her warnings were sharper now. "We need to change the tone, not more handshakes. They need to see who they're dealing with." The Zelhari allowed a new audience. This time, not aboard their vessel, but on a neutral asteroid platform lined with translucent vines and bioluminescent moss. It looked peaceful. That was the point. Avarinale greeted them with her customary grace, but something was different. Her movements had less flow, her words more calculation. "Your physiological volatility is significant," she said carefully. "The Council suggests enhanced harmonization protocols." "You mean conditioning," Valerie said. Avarinale didn't blink. "Recalibration for peaceful coexistence." "You're asking us to dull our instincts, to evolve." Valerie stepped forward, her voice low. "Earth evolved by fighting tooth and claw through ice and fire. You think calm is strength. We know it's camouflage." A silence fell between them like falling ash. Back on the Resolute, Valerie met with Agent Miro Thorne, the embedded intelligence lead. Thin, angular, all sharp glances and quiet menace. "They've been mapping our aggression indexes since day one," Miro said, "trying to predict us, quantify us." "Can't quantify chaos," Valerie muttered. Miro handed her a tablet. "Intercepted this from a Zelhari whisper band. They're considering activating the vanishing protocol." She frowned. "That's not in the official lexicon." "It is now. Translates to total neutralization." That night, Valerie stood alone in the observation deck. Earth glowed like a blue jewel below, wild and unrepentant. She activated the private channel. "This is Dr. Valerie Knox, authorizing off-the-record directive. Project Emberlight, Contingency 4. If the Zelhari escalate, we don't mirror, we ignite." Below her, Earth spun on. A planet built not on harmony, but on resilience. The next morning, the Zelhari called for one final meeting. to be held in the upper ionosphere of Jupiter. Neutral ground, they said. But Valerie knew better. Predators always circle before they strike. The shuttle ride to Jupiter's edge was quiet. Not in the peaceful way, in the quiet that happens just before something ancient moves. Valerie Knox sat in the command chair of the diplomatic pod, staring into the swirling brown atmosphere below. The ionosphere glowed faintly from the storm below, turbulent and endless. Jupiter had always fascinated humanity, not because it was beautiful, because it was dangerous. "Final comm check complete," came Peter Chow's voice from the secondary seat. Miro Thorne leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed. "This place screams trap." Valerie nodded. "Then let's not disappoint them." The meeting platform hovered in near Jovian orbit, tethered by graviton anchors and stabilized by auto-correcting thrusters. It looked like a stage built for gods, wide, circular, and rimmed with runes in an alien script that pulsed in sync with ambient electromagnetic currents. The Zelhari delegation was already there. Only 4 members, fewer than expected. Avari Nail stood at the center, flanked by 2 silent advisors and a new presence, taller, cloaked in black lattice armor. The moment Valerie saw it, her gut turned. Not a diplomat, a soldier. "Welcome," Avari Nail said. Her tone was warmer than before, too warm. "We appreciate your courage in meeting us here." Valerie stepped forward. "No courage, just curiosity." A soft tension drifted between them like static. "Earth remains vibrant," Avari Nail continued, "but unstable. It may become necessary to enforce adaptive order before your evolution leads to collapse." Miro stiffened. "That's not diplomacy. That's a veiled ultimatum." Valerie kept her voice even. "You want us to fit inside a mold shaped by a civilization that never had to fight to breathe. We're not defective. We're different." The cloaked Zelhari finally moved. "She speaks from instinct," it said. Its voice was like shattered crystal. "Instinct leads to war." Valerie stared it down. "Instinct leads to survival." At that moment, deep within the bowels of the Resolute, Project Emberlight went live. Code-red beacons pulsed behind closed consoles. Orbital weapon systems shifted imperceptibly. General Drevik gave the command, "Do not fire unless fired upon, but be ready." Back on the platform, Avari Nael raised one long hand. "We do not wish for conflict, but chaos cannot be left unchecked." Valerie took a slow breath. "Then you misunderstand Earth. We don't fear chaos. We navigate it. We make art from it. Family, civilization. You evolved to live in balance. We evolved to survive disaster. We're not your anomaly. We're your future." The Zelhari flinched, not visibly, but something shifted in the light behind their eyes. A tremor in certainty. Then the cloaked soldier took a step forward. "Then prove it." Valerie tilted her head. "How?" "1-on-1. Your instinct versus ours. Trial by nature." Chow hissed. "You've got to be kidding." But Valerie didn't blink. "Accepted." Avari Nael tried to interject. "That is not sanctioned." "Let it happen," the cloaked figure said. "Let them show what they value most." Within an hour, Valerie stood in an artificial environment chamber, built in the likeness of Earth's early Pleistocene epoch. The air was thick, the ground rough with basalt and moss. The Zelhari combatant emerged from the mist, armored but unarmed. Valerie wore only reinforced expedition gear, no weapons, just instinct. What followed was not a fight in the traditional sense. It was an encounter. They moved around each other in patterns shaped by history, her dodge reflexes honed by a species that once ran from predators twice their size. His counters precise, honed in zero-gravity balance. She adapted, he calculated. She leapt from instinct, he hesitated from logic. And that's where she won, not by strength, but unpredictability. The Zelhari went down hard, no blood, no scream, just stillness. Valerie stood over him. "Now do you understand?" Avari Nael watched from the observation dome above, Her lips parted slightly, not in anger, in awe. The silence after the trial echoed longer than the fight itself. The Zelhari warrior lay motionless, then slowly sat up, not with shame but contemplation. He reached out and pressed his fingertips to the ground as if touching Earth's ghost. "Your chaos is patterned." Valerie extended a hand. He took it. Above, the observation dome dimmed to black. Hours later, aboard the Resolute, Valerie sat alone in the debriefing chamber, still dressed in expedition gear streaked with sweat and Pleistocene dust. She replayed the encounter over and over in her mind, not to analyze the fight, but the moment after. The awe. There was no joy in her victory, just a rising weight in her chest, the knowledge that the universe wasn't built to admire what humans had become. It feared it. Miro entered silently, tossing her a ration bar. "You're a legend now. Zelhari comms are lit up with reverence and revision. Half their network is trying to redefine what just happened." Valerie peeled the bar open without looking at it. "What are the other half doing? Calling for escalation." She grimaced. On the Zelhari flagship, Avari Nael convened with her advisors. What had begun as a diplomatic alignment mission was now under internal review. The cloaked warrior spoke softly, but his words carried weight. "We have encountered a paradox. Their biology is hostile, yet their actions are not. Their minds are erratic, yet their honor is precise." One of the advisors whispered, "We must reassess the accord." Avari Nael nodded, watching a projection of Valerie's trial on repeat, her expression unreadable. On Earth, the public remained in the dark. The official narrative spoke of cultural exchange and early alliance stages, but high command bunkers buzzed with contingency strategies. For every message sent to the Zelhari, 10 covert transmissions readied Earth's last resorts. General Drevik stood in the war room, hands clasped behind his back. "We've danced at the edge of extinction for millennia. If they push, we don't fall. We ignite." Valerie paced the corridor outside the command deck. Peter Chow approached, tablet in hand. "New data from our deep listeners. Gravitational ripples, multiple. Zelhari reinforcements? Or someone else responding to their signal. We're not alone in this play." Her stomach sank. Then the fire's only starting. She returned to the viewport. The stars were no longer just points of light. They were watchers. They came in pairs. 2 ships at a time, silent, alien. They didn't transmit signals, at least not in any frequency the Zelhari or human systems could immediately detect. But their presence was undeniable. Space warped faintly around their hulls, and stars behind them shimmered with refracted memory. Valerie stood on the bridge of the Resolute, eyes locked to the tactical screen. 10 vessels confirmed, Peter Chow reported. Each one different. Asymmetrical builds, energy outputs unlike anything we've catalogued. Miro folded his arms. "They're not Zelhari, that's certain, but they came here. Why?" "They were listening," Valerie murmured. "To us, to the Zelhari, maybe to everything." On the Zelhari side, panic blossomed beneath their polished exterior. Avari Nael's voice cracked for the first time in any broadcast. "The Harmonic Order did not sanction outside contact. These anomalies disrupt integration." Her advisors hovered anxiously. The cloaked warrior remained silent, a statue among shadows. From Earth's deep listening station in Antarctica, a decrypted signal finally broke through from one of the new arrivals. It was not language, it was sensation. Pressure. Heat. Then a single message. "We remember extinction. Do not repeat it." General Drevik read it 3 times before responding. "Who are they talking to?" Valerie answered for him. "Everyone." The diplomatic platform was reactivated, a tri-party summit. Zelhari, human, and these new observers. They didn't manifest physically. Instead, they appeared as silhouettes of light and sound, blurred figures whose edges changed depending on who looked at them. One turned to Valerie. You do not belong to harmony. She shook her head. We never did. We belong to survival. To her surprise, the figure seemed to bow. Then you remember, as we do. The Zelhari bristled. Avarinale stepped forward. Your arrival endangers the Accord. The figure's light flared. The Accord was flawed. You seek peace through stillness. Peace is not still. It moves. It burns. It fights to exist. Another figure turned to the humans. You are imperfect, chaotic, but your fire has not yet destroyed you. That is rare. Valerie narrowed her eyes. Why are you here? To see if your instincts lead to ruin or revelation. Back aboard the Resolute, tension mounted. The Zelhari began shifting forces to the dark side of Europa. Earth's orbital fleet mirrored their movement. Stalemate. But the presence of the observers changed everything. No one wanted to be the first to fire, not under their gaze. In a private chamber, Valerie faced Avarinale. You thought we were anomalies, she said. Now you see, we're just the latest echo of something older. Avarinale's composure cracked further. We believed order was protection, that control meant safety. It never did. Valerie leaned closer. Maybe survival isn't about perfection. Maybe it's about remembering what pain taught us. The observers watched from silence, and the silence cracked everything. It wasn't war, not yet, but it wasn't diplomacy either. Earth's fleet moved with restraint, Zelhari forces shimmered like ghosts, and between them stood the observers, unreadable and ancient. Valerie Knox stood before the projection wall, watching the data streams blur. Their sensors couldn't fully capture the energy fields of the observers. Some algorithms even flagged them as temporal anomalies. They remember extinction, she whispered again. But from which side? Peter Chow entered quietly, handing her a new readout. They've begun emitting frequencies, harmonics that align with Earth's own magnetic rhythms, like they're tuning in. Valerie raised an eyebrow. Or sinking for judgment. Aboard the Zelhari command node, Avarinale gathered with her surviving delegates. The cloaked warrior, now revealed as Rylax, an enforcer of ancient code, stood with arms crossed. They threatened us without threat, he said. A paradox, one that demands action. No, Avarinale said softly. They demand memory. That night, Valerie stood in the Resolute's observation dome. Below, Jupiter churned, vast and indifferent. Miro appeared beside her. The UN wants an update, so does Drevik. They're asking if this can be de-escalated. It was never escalated, she replied. It's revelation. The observers aren't here to judge a battle. They're here to watch if we repeat it. A soft tone echoed through the ship. A direct message. From Observer Entity to Valerie Knox. Message. The last world burned before it asked itself if peace could bleed. Valerie read the line twice. Her hands trembled. The next summit was different. No guards, no weapons, just voices. Valerie stood across from Avarinale once more. I've read your histories, Avari said. All violence, but also endurance. I think we both fear the same thing. Valerie nodded. That survival requires forgetting what it cost. The observers hovered between them. We remember flame, one said. But flame is not fault, it is function. What you do now defines the ember's worth. No more declarations, no ultimatums. Just choice. Avari turned to Valerie. Then let's stop pretending this was peace. Let's make it survival, together. Valerie reached out. Two hands met. The first alliance born not of harmony, but of memory. They called it the Accord of Survival, signed not with ink, but with the weight of memory. The platform was reformed above Io, where lava raged below, an echo of the past Earth and the Zelhari both feared and misunderstood. A symbolic place, beauty born of fire. Valerie Knox stood beside Avarinale as documents formed through encoded energy fields. Observers encircled them in a halo of harmonic resonance, bearing silent witness. Terms of the Accord, Avarinale began, her voice measured. No forced integrations. All planetary cultures retain sovereign adaptation rights. Peace through shared experience, not imposed equilibrium. Valerie nodded, and recognition that survival itself is not instability, but the highest proof of sentience. The moment her fingerprint bonded with the Zelhari sigil, a wave of silence swept the platform. Then, one by one, the observers blinked out. All but one. It turned to Valerie and whispered, "You've done what many never could. Survive without surrendering yourselves." Valerie met its formless gaze. "Is that what you waited to see?" "No, we waited to see if you would remember." And then it vanished. News of the Accord hit Earth like thunder. The media spun tales of victory, diplomacy, heroism, but beneath it all the message sank deeper. We are not just diplomats. We are survivors. And in every classroom, every street mural, every orbital transmission, the message echoed, "Survival is not shame, it is legacy." General Drevik spoke quietly into a secure channel. "The treaties won't last forever, but maybe the memory will." Aboard the Resolute, Valerie stood at the viewport, watching the stars realign. Miro approached. "We've received a formal invitation. Observer space. They want us to see where the last war began." She took a long breath. "Then maybe we'll see where the next one can be prevented." He chuckled. "And if not? Then we'll do what we always do. Survive?" "No." She turned toward the stars, her eyes lit with something deeper than hope. "Adapt." The journey to observer space began in silence. No one knew what to expect. Not Valerie, not Miro, not even the seasoned tacticians aboard the ISC Resolute. Observer space wasn't charted, no coordinates, no mapped warp lanes. The invitation had come in the form of gravitational echoes, a pattern only Earth's newest quantum AI could interpret. The route required folding reality, slipping between space-time seams carved not by engines but by resonance. The observers had not given permission as much as they had opened a door and waited to see who would step through. Valerie stood in the helm chamber, gazing into the cascade of light as the ship dissolved into the fold. It wasn't like jumping to light speed or warp. It was like memory itself folded backward. They emerged into silence. Observer space was black. Not the kind of black that spoke of distance or cold. This black absorbed meaning. Stars flickered here, but they were reflections, echoes of stars long dead, a cosmic graveyard. And in the center, a world. Not a planet, a construct. A sphere of fractal geometry and shimmering light, pulsing slowly like a heart. It wasn't alive, but it remembered life. They called it the Echo Core. The Resolute was drawn closer, not by force but by invitation. Its systems responded automatically, guiding the ship to orbit. The crew was limited. Only 6 were allowed down. Valerie, Miro, Peter Chow, an archivist, a diplomat, and a war historian. They descended in silence. The surface of the Echo Core was a mirror. It reflected not your face, but your legacy. Valerie looked down and saw not herself, but 1,000 burning decisions. Children hiding in rubble, soldiers screaming into the void. She saw her failures. Miro stepped beside her. "I see the war that never was." The observers waited, not as bodies, but as impressions on light. "You walk between stars," one said. "Now walk between truths." Each of the 6 was taken, alone, to a chamber. Valerie entered hers without hesitation. Inside was Earth, not literally. A reconstruction, cities lost, species extinct, cultures erased by time. Her mother's voice played faintly in the background. The smell of rain, her childhood home. Then came the overlay, war reports, famine logs, protest footage, orbital strikes. "You carry all this," the observer said, "and yet you remain." Valerie knelt, eyes closed. "I don't want to forget, but I'm afraid of what remembering does to us." The observer responded with sorrow. "Then let us remember together." Hours passed, or days. Time bent strangely in the core. When the six returned to the landing zone, none spoke of what they saw. But they were changed. The observer envoy formed a spiral in the sky above. "You are not what we feared," they intoned. "You are not yet what we hoped, but you remember, and that is rare." A beam of harmonic code transferred into the Resolute's archives. A library, one older than known history. Stories of lost empires, decisions made in fear, alliances forged too late. A gift. A warning. Miro looked to Valerie. "What now?" She smiled faintly. "We bring it home." He arched a brow. "Even if no one listens?" She stepped toward the ship. "Then we speak louder." The Resolute emerged from the fold into familiar stars, but nothing felt the same. Observer space lingered in their bones. It had changed them, even if no scans or reports could measure it. Valerie Knox stood at the viewport, watching Earth rise slowly into view. A brilliant orb painted with war scars and wonder. "Incoming message," Peter Chow announced from the communications array. "High Command priority. They want a full debrief and the data package." Miro chuckled from the side. "Of course they do." Valerie didn't smile. "Tell them they'll get it, but we choose how it's told." The briefing chamber was cold and full of eyes. Generals, scientists, cultural strategists, politicians with polished smiles and veiled agendas. Valerie stood alone before them. Behind her, the observer archive hovered in quantum stasis. "This," she began, "isn't a weapon, it's a mirror." Slides flickered. Images from the Echo Core. Ruined cities that never existed. Cultures erased by choices made in fear. Empires that burned themselves to protect ideals they never understood. These are their memories and warnings. They offered them not because they fear us, but because they see a pattern, one we've barely escaped so far. A senator leaned forward. "What does this mean for Earth?" Valerie met his gaze. "That our survival isn't enough. We have to decide what we survive as." The archive spread across the world like fire. Restricted at first, then leaked, then public. Students read the tales of empires that danced into oblivion. Soldiers rewatched the choices that cost other civilizations their future. Artists began to paint in echoes and flame. The accord with the Zelhari grew stronger, not out of fear, but empathy. For the first time, humans weren't the anomaly. They were the reminder. In her old apartment, Valerie watched the stars again. She hadn't returned to High Command. She didn't want another medal. She wanted silence, and maybe clarity. The door chimed. Miro entered, holding a tablet. "They want you back. Council position. You'd shape the next century." She shook her head. "Not yet. Let's make sure there's a century to shape." He sat beside her. "The archive spreading to the colonies now. Mars, Titan, even the Kuiper Fringe. They're listening." She exhaled. "Then we did our job." He looked toward the stars. "Think the observers will come back?" Valerie watched a comet drift across the black. They never left. The ceremony was held in the ruins of old Geneva. The city had been left partially unrestored since the collapse, not out of neglect, but as memory. The scorched buildings were draped with living moss. Sculptures fashioned from wreckage stood alongside new-growth trees. It was here, under broken skylines and patchwork stars, that humanity chose its voice. Valerie Knox stood at the edge of the amphitheater, watching crowds gather from every continent. Holograms of observer script rippled across the air, ancient language sharing space with human ones. Miro adjusted his coat beside her. "The world's watching, again." She smiled faintly. "Let's give them something worth remembering." The declaration was not political, not military. It was human. The United Terran Accords, revised and rewritten, embracing not control but remembrance, the first doctrine built not around defense but evolution. Valerie stepped up to the mic. No grand stage, no lights, just raw voice. We've survived every extinction they said would end us. Climate, war, famine, collapse. And each time we adapted, not by erasing pain, but by carrying it forward. The observers saw something in us, not power, not peace, instinct, the drive to survive with memory, not in spite of it. Today we recognize that instinct is not something to tame, but to understand. The silence afterward was full of breath, then applause, real, earned. In the following months, the Observer Archive reshaped everything. History curriculums rewrote timelines. Galactic councils redrafted alliance clauses. Selhari emissaries returned, not as overseers, but as equals. Human ships now traveled not just through space, but through memory. New missions were launched to the edges of mapped space, not to conquer, to listen. In a quiet moment, Valerie returned to the Echo Core. It pulsed softly, now open to all, but forever changed. An observer emerged beside her, shimmering like sunlight on water. "You chose fire," it said, "but you carried the ash with grace." She nodded. "We didn't just want to survive. We wanted to mean something." The observer extended a single strand of light. It touched her temple, then flickered into the stars. A legacy chosen, not given. She stood in silence, watching as the light scattered across galaxies. A human fire, measured not in destruction, but in memory. And if this journey moved you, leave a comment, like, and subscribe for more tales of humanity's echo across the stars. What fire will you choose?